Right, so it's 2 o'clock, I think, so we'll start.
Oh, I see.
Anyone who's not here is clearly just missing out. But anyway, my name's Bolingbroke Kent. These two lovely ladies are Jackie Furno and Steph Jevons. And we are doing a panel about female solo motorcycle travel, as we are at a motorcycle event, obviously. But we're going to start with a 3-minute cartoon about Elspeth Beard's journey. Now, I'm sure Elspeth doesn't need any introduction. You all know who she is. She was the first British woman to motorcycle around the world, set off in 1980 on her trusty BMW R6. And if you haven't read her book, Lone Rider, then do, but make sure you've got box tissues at the end. I sobbed terribly. So this is a 3-minute video, which is just going to set the scene. So, Ian, press go.
When I was on my bike, it did give me an amazing sense of freedom. And nobody could touch me and nobody could stop me. It just sort of empowered me. My name is Elspeth Beard and I'm the first British woman to go around the world on a motorbike. When I was 23, I rode my bike around the world for just over 2 years. I left in 1982, travelling 35,000 miles through 20 countries. In those days, it didn't even occur to anybody for a second that it would be a woman riding a bike. So when I was actually riding the bike and I was fully dressed in all my gear, I felt quite safe. Australia was so weird in the outback. I would ride for sort of 300 or 400 miles with nothing. You'd come to a roadhouse and you'd walk into this bar and literally it was like a sort of scene from a film. You know, everybody would just kind of stop dead and all turn around and look at you. And in some places they didn't even serve me. So I'd go outside and drink water from a tap. I did find the whole trip quite isolating and I got incredibly lonely. I would pick up mail every 3 months and that was the only contact I had with home and friends and family. But then it was great. I'd rush to the post office. It was a really, I used to love it. And I'd get this whole stack of letters. And I'd get like 3 months news. And I'd go somewhere and I'd sit there for hours just reading through all this, savouring all of the news. One of the travellers that I met was a Dutch guy called Robert. It suddenly became almost a holiday from what it had been when I was travelling on my own. We met in Kathmandu. We travelled together through Rajasthan, up through Kashmir, Leh and Ladakh. And it was actually up in Kashmir that we fell in love. Iran was at war with Iraq. There were lots of tanks and soldiers. There were roadblocks every 50 or 100 miles. And we had this ridiculous situation where we'd changed dollars on the black market. We got 5.5 times what we would have got. But we would go to these Western hotels and we'd be shooing out the door. No, you can't stay here. As if they were frightened that we would be seen. And a lot of the time we would be sleeping on the side of the road. Some countries I couldn't even get maps for because they just didn't exist. I used to have to go to these kind of tourist places and just get little local maps and I had to kind of join them all up so I could kind of work out where the hell I was trying to go. Getting lost and finding your way again is part of the adventure. Whereas if you are following a red line on a screen, all those opportunities don't exist. They're sort of taken away. The trip completely changed me as a person. Completely. You really are pushed to the absolute limit and it makes you grow. It just makes you stronger and, you can take anything on.
That was good. Right, so that sets the tone pretty well. Elspeth is signing books in the author's tent, so do go and have a chat with her afterwards. And I'm going to start by introducing these two lovely ladies. Next to me is Steph Jevons, who I'm sure you all know, probably lots of you went to her talk last night. She has freshly returned from a pretty epic circumnavigation of the globe. Well, more than that, really. She rode her 250cc Honda called Ronda, 74,000 miles. I wasn't even sure that many miles in the world, actually, but 74,000 miles through 54 countries on 7 continents. She got caught in a Himalayan landslide on the highest motorable road in the world. She rode Ronda on Antarctica, and she visited the hottest, wettest, highest, driest, coldest places on the planet. And she turned down 6 marriage proposals. And she got back quite recently, so obviously all the experiences are still very fresh in her mind. And then Jackie, who is a fellow Bristol dweller like myself, Jackie rode her Enfield, which is here in the motorcycle tent. Is Rhonda there as well?
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
so you can see both these famous motorcycles in the tent. Jackie rode her Enfield around the world for 7 years, essentially with no plan, often with no map. She got herself into a multitude of misadventures and adventures. She fell in love several times. She broke her leg in Pakistan. She found herself on 2 boats with complete maniacs. And yeah, it's her book, Hit the Road, Jack, is really fantastic and really captures that essence of the sort of freewheeling freedom of motorcycle travel. So do read it. And Jackie just said to me that I should probably say something about myself, which I probably should. Briefly, my name's Antonia Bolingbroke-Kent, and I've written a couple of books and done some long motorcycle journeys as well. And I'll be giving a talk later on, 6 o'clock, so you can come and see that. Jackie's giving a talk after this. Steph talked last night.
Did one, yeah.
So this is a panel about female solo motorcycle travel, but it's wonderful to see lots of gentlemen here as well, although some in the front row promised they were going to wear skirts and lipstick, but they're not, but we'll let them get away with that. They can make up for it later in the bar. So first question, ladies, I'm going to address this to Steph.
Waking up now?
Right, wake up. So why did you choose to travel solo? What made you disappear off on Ronda around the world for 4 years?
Well, like I said last night, I haven't got any friends. But thanks, thank you. But would you like to be my friend? I got 2 new friends, yay! No, I don't know. I think I wanted to prove something to myself, maybe, and I'm genuinely not very good at long-term relationships. That's not actually a joke, and so I wanted to be able to make all my own decisions. You know, I think it's interesting to know how you're going to react when you don't have other people around you to back you up. And you learn a lot about yourself. And this journey was a very selfish journey as well. So I wanted to be able to go, I'm going this way and nobody can argue with me. And there are downsides to that, of course. It means that you have to make all the decisions all the time. And so even when you're tired or grumpy or hungry or you've got a flat tire or whatever, you have to deal with it yourself. But that makes you stronger, I think. So I have absolutely no regrets. A lot of people did genuinely believe, I'd say I'm on my own, and they go, oh, you know, bless you, or or where's your husband, you know. But
we're going to talk about those where's your husband comments later, so don't give them all up.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think it was really just a selfish journey that I wanted to get out there and do my thing, and it was my dream, not anybody else's, you know. So
had you travelled solo before?
No, never. I'd been abroad before. I'd run tours in Morocco before, but with a great team around me. And I'm saying that because some of them are in the audience right now. But I'd never actually been abroad on my own before, not backpacking or anything. So it was a real, you know, I put everything on the line and went, oh, let's see what happens.
Nothing like jumping in at the deep end.
Yeah.
Jackie, your story is a little bit different. I mean, how did you end up travelling solo?
Well, it didn't start off like that at all. I fell in love with a Dutchman and ended up buying an Enfield, and after a while I was on my own because he wanted to travel solo. So I had the decision to make, what do I do now? Having never been on my own much before at all. And there I was lumbered with this lump of metal called an Enfield to manage, and the first thing I had to do was to learn how to pick it up myself, because I'd always just blown the horn and he'd come and help me pick it up. So I had to learn to take the luggage off and get my back to it and pick it up. And then I spent another 3 years travelling on my own. So I'm lucky I've had a mixture of the two. But I didn't know whether I could manage or not. But like Steph said, it was lovely to be able to make my own decisions and eat when I was hungry and stop at the hotel I thought looked all right and go down that road instead of that road and get lost a lot.
I actually think it's a really strong thing to go as a couple. I mean, that's amazing to me. I don't know how people do it, because you end up in a situation, like when I have ridden with people, you end up going, you know, if you've got no comms as well, particularly, so if they're taking the lead, you're going, why is he doing that? Oh, for crying out, I'd have stopped there. You know, or if they're in front, they've got the same. So you have these little niggles, and crikey, that would stress me out. I don't know how couples survive on the road together.
Yeah, it's often much simpler actually, just travelling alone and being selfish.
Yeah.
And Jackie, I've just read your book. Steph, I haven't. I know you've written a book, 2 books. I haven't read your book. I'm so sorry. Has it been published yet?
Wow, you just
I'm so sorry. But I was really interested to read in Jackie's book about your childhood and upbringing, and this is something I always find really interesting hearing from people like yourselves who go off and do these big journeys on their own, about perhaps how that independent solo spirit was fostered as a child. And you said you're a real tomboy and you're always climbing trees, and do you think that's how your parents treated you, the fact that they never made you feel sort of like a girl, and that
Absolutely.
sowed the seeds for your
Well, yes, and I've heard
big escape?
Lois Price say the same. And I think Elspeth in her book says the same, that she had brothers, or she had a brother, I had a brother, and there was absolutely no difference between the way we were brought up at all. And my father taught me how to use carpentry tools, and he showed me how to do a few bits of mechanics on his motorbike, and I was treated like a child, not a girl. And try as my mother did to force me into a white frilly dress, I wasn't interested and just wore jeans or trousers. Trews, I think they were called at the time. But no, I wasn't forced to be a little girl, and I really worry about girls now, or children in general, being told, oh, be careful, don't go out of where I can see you.
Be careful, be careful.
Yes, you'll fall. And it really worries me that children are losing freedom to hurt yourself. You have to learn to hurt yourself and to be rubbed down and told you'll live and things like that. I'm very worried.
And Steph, what were you like as a child? Tomboy? Were you naughty, never wearing a dress?
Yeah, I do remember a pink dress that I was put in to go to a party once. And I can remember the first time in primary school, some boy coming up to me and saying, are you a tomboy? And I remember going away thinking, and there was no Google then, right? So I couldn't Google it. But I remember, what the hell is a tomboy? I have no idea what this tomboy thing is. And I kind of inquired, and it turns out, I guess I was. I don't know. I was just me being me. And I'd had 2 sisters. I didn't have brothers. I always wished for brothers, but my dad was the only guy in the house, and so I didn't have that. But that's just naturally how I was. That's how I was born. You know, maybe it was because my parents were wishing for a boy, and so it came through. And I don't know.
Oh my God,
but I don't see myself as like boyish. I think I'm just me doing my thing, doing what I enjoy. So this whole tomboy thing doesn't really, I don't really. I'm just me doing my thing, and I'm not, I don't know. But yes, I did prefer getting dirty and climbing trees and playing football rather than talking about who's wearing a bra, So, yeah.
I remember being given a My Little Pony set when I was a child and swapping it with one of my male friends with his He-Man set. But yes, he did turn out to be gay.
Yeah. But actually, you just reminded me, I had a friend who was the only vegetarian in the village at the time. There wasn't many vegetarians in Wales at that point. And she had a set of Cindy dolls, and she had all the horses and the things. And I used to go and secretly play with her Cindy dolls because everybody knew that I didn't like that kind of a thing, and so they bought me teddies or whatever. So it was kind of the other way for me. I would secretly go and play with the dolls. It's just kind of bizarre, isn't it? But
you didn't take them on your round the world trip?
No,
that's good.
I'm not telling you.
And when Steph, when you decided that you were going to go off and do this 4-year trip on your own, how did people react? I mean, firstly, your family and those close to you and your friends, were they encouraging, or did they go, oh my God, you're a woman, or you can't go on your own, or just you can't go on your own, or what? How do people react to you?
No, I didn't have anybody saying you can't go on your own. I had one guy say you've bitten off more than he can chew. I don't know if that was because I was a woman or just because he thought I was rubbish. But my parents, well, most of my friends and my parents, their eyes started glazing over after a while because I talked about it and was obsessed. And they didn't really believe that I was going to do it. It's one of those, another one of her ideas, which isn't going to come, it isn't going to happen. And then I set a date, and they I remember my dad the first. I said, "So I'm going on this date," and he went. He kind of, his ears pricked up a bit and went, "Oh, she's actually going," But they never said, well, they know better than to say don't do it. Of course, they were worried, but they would have been for a son, I suppose. But no, I had a lot of people sort of saying, later on, I think more on the road, I found a lot of people saying, "You're on your own, that's unbelievable, but you're a woman."
Where did you have that the most? Because we've all had that. I'm really interested to hear, like, which countries, how do people react to you in different countries being a solo female, and what were the kind of the most bizarre or extreme reactions?
I think for me, South Africa is one of the places that's quite a macho place, a very cool place, and I loved South Africa. But I did get a lot of guys saying, "Well, you're crazy. You're going to get raped and murdered. You're going to get pulled from your bike and raped and murdered." That was a quote. So that kind of thing that people say to you all the time, and I don't think they do it to frighten you necessarily. I think they do it because that's what they genuinely believe is going to happen. And then I'm a fool, and I say, "Well, I've made it this far all the way around the world. South Africa is Africa is my final continent." And I go, "Yes, but," and this was the favorite quote, "TIA." And I go, "Well, what's TIA? This is Africa." It's like, you know nothing. You haven't been to Africa yet. And I'd say, "Well, where have you been then out of South Africa?" "Well, nowhere." Okay, but you're still the expert, right?
Yeah. And Jackie, what about you? With I guess your daughters were your big thing rather than your parents. How did your daughters react when you said, "Hey, I bought an Enfield. I'm going to go off around the world with this new hot young Dutchman I've met"?
Well, they weren't really surprised, for one thing. My elder daughter, Claire, now says to me, "Oh, Mum, you're 10 years old, really, aren't you? Why do you pretend to be an adult when you're not really?" So they weren't surprised, and they stopped worrying about me. I'd spent a year backpacking before I went off with Hendrikus and bought the Enfield, and I think they were pleasantly surprised that I hadn't got blown up by a landmine in Colombia, and they say they stopped worrying after Colombia. No, not Colombia. Cambodia. Cambodia, thank you. Yes, I moved the Odyssey. Yeah, because there's lots of landmines in Cambodia, and I had wandered around off track, and they were a bit worried about that. But when I survived and got back to Thailand, they decided they wouldn't worry anymore. So nothing was a surprise.
And what about people you met on the way? Were there any particular countries where people were especially surprised that you're a woman travelling on your own, or where they particularly looked after you because you're on your own? Or
Yes, I got very well looked after in Pakistan. I broke my leg in Pakistan, and one of the staff at the hospital I was at wouldn't hear of me going to a hotel after I was discharged. They took me home with them. They changed their squat toilet to a sit-down toilet, a European one, specially for me, and looked after me and Hendrikus for about 3 months. They wouldn't take any money or anything. But in going back to Colombia, which really is Colombia this time, I was riding along the road, and I was stopped by what I hoped weren't guerrillas, but later turned out to be police, and they looked around for the rest of the party I must be with, and then realised I was on my own, and they were a bit shocked about that. But no, I've been well looked after by very generous people everywhere I've been.
isn't that interesting that the two countries you just mentioned, Pakistan and Colombia, are two countries that sort of most people sort of get a sort of red light in their brain and go, "Don't go there," and yet you had incredibly positive experiences. And I mean, this isn't necessarily relevant to female solo travel, it's to all of us who travel by motorcycle, but I think actually in a way we're all unofficial ambassadors. It's really really important that we keep doing these sort of journeys and going to places that perhaps the FCO aren't that keen on you going to, places like Pakistan and maybe Iraqi Kurdistan, even northern Afghanistan at the moment, Colombia, and coming back and telling people those positive stories that actually, not everyone in Pakistan or Colombia is going to rape and murder you. In fact, completely the opposite.
Absolutely.
And it feels kind of increasingly important these days, where people are becoming even more fearful and the news is full of even more horrific things, that we do these journeys and we bring back those positive stories.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's going off the thing of female solo travel. But Steph, you mentioned quite near the beginning about warnings, and it's something that we all have as travellers, that people say to you, don't go down that road, it's really dangerous. Don't go to Colombia, you're going to get kidnapped by bandits. And it happens everywhere, and it seems to be something that every country says about their neighbours, or every village says about the neighbouring village. It's difficult for us to tell because we've only ever had the experience of travelling alone as women, but do you think that women get warned more? Do you think people kind of look at you and think, you're not going to be able to ride that Enfield down that track, or you're not going to be able to ride that Ronda on Antarctica, far too many dangerous penguins? Do you think we get warned more? It'd be interesting to have an input from some men, actually.
Yeah, I don't actually know that, and I think I know that guys tell a lot of the same stories, which is that they get a lot of warnings, and so I do hear that from guys a lot. Maybe we do, because guys do want to look after us generally more, and so I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's called chivalry, and I think that's a nice thing. So and so maybe we do, that people they want to. It's their natural instinct to help, and to help often that means to warn. Please be careful. Please don't go down that road on your own. And that's what we do as human beings, I think. So maybe we do a little bit. I know a lot of guys though that will say they get warned all the time as well. So
guys, do you get warned all the time as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
excellent. And where were you warned about the most? Which village or country or area said about the next one, don't go there, terrible things are going to happen to you?
I don't know.
Oxford.
Yeah. South Wales. Yeah.
I find it going up through Central America quite a lot, because the countries are quite small and you get across them fairly quickly. And each one I went in, they said, you're going to Costa Rica? Oh, you're going to Nicaragua? You're going to Guatemala? Don't go there. So it's always the neighbouring country, I found.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. I think the place I've been warned about the most is Tajikistan, which several people in this room have been to with me. And yet it's probably the country that surprised me the most, in that it's just so unbelievably friendly and such extraordinarily exciting riding. So often, like, the warnings sort of converse to the amount of fun you're going to have. The more warnings, the bigger the adventure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying go to Helmand province right now, but there's a balance, definitely. And linked to that is something both of you have talked about earlier. This perhaps need to prove yourself, and there's this brilliant bit in your book, Jackie, where you write yourself this certificate. Tell us what that certificate said, and also do you first tell us what the certificate said and why you wrote it.
I'd just done a really difficult road, the most difficult road I'd ever done on my own, and it was in Java, and I was advised to go and see some turtles on a beach coming up at night to lay their eggs, and I really, really wanted to see this. And the person that had advised me said, well, the road's a bit rough, it's got some sand on it and mud, and you have to cross a river. And I'd already done all those things before, and I imagined a little bit of sand at the side of the road, a puddle or two, and perhaps a little rivulet at the bottom. But it was a really, really hard day's ride, and it was I was a bag of nerves by the time I got to this place. And I had such a lovely evening, and I saw the turtles laying their eggs, and the next day I had to go back up the way I'd come, which was even more difficult going back up than it was coming down. And when I got to the end, I thought, that's it. I have reached that point beyond which I do not have to prove anything to anybody, including myself, ever again. I can do difficult things like this if I choose to, but not because I feel I have to prove something. And I thought, well, I'm going to write this down because this is quite a momentous occasion. And so I did write that certificate, and I think it said, I've got it at home, and it said, I, Jacqueline Claire Furneaux, do hereby certify that I no longer have to prove anything to myself or anybody else. And I drew little pictures at the side of it, because one of the things I carry with me is a little drawing and painting set, and I drew turtles and rivers and lakes and things, and I've still got that. And it did prove something to myself after a lifetime of being the little sister, the naughty little sister. I had a sensible older brother who passed his 11 plus and was very academic, and I wasn't, and failed my 11 plus. And I think I've always been trying to get over that. And at that point, I had.
You are so cool. She's so cool. She's so cool, man.
Do you think there's that perhaps women feel more of a need to prove themselves because perhaps a lot of women have less self-confidence, less self-belief, and hence kind of have this thing that you need to prove yourself more? I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm just wondering if you've got an opinion.
Men have it worse, don't they? Because
Well, for different reasons, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, I was the girl that was drinking the litre of Strongbow cider with the guys, downing one just to prove that I could do it better than the guys, you know? So I think I always was trying to prove myself better than one of the guys, you know, and I don't do that anymore, and that comes with age. I'm not sure it's even the trip that changed that. I don't know. I think that's come with age of going, you don't really need to do that, do you? You know, just, you know. Although I still do it. I still drink tequila like a lunatic. Gotcha. And now they're trying to keep up with me, you know, so.
But has any man ridden further on a 250cc bike than you?
No.
Right, so yeah. Yeah. Go Rhonda. And often, I mean, I find often when I'm travelling alone, people actually, there's something when you were talking about the reactions of people. I should have said that when I was in India, particularly my last trip in Arunachal Pradesh, I was travelling very tribal areas, and the tribal people never said this, but when I met Indians from other states, they would say, how does your husband let you roam around without you like this, and without him like this, and where's your husband? And sometimes men just would not accept that I wasn't with my husband. They'd sort of go like looking around the road a bit, so look over to some Indian men who were swimming in the river and so check that my husband wasn't there, and just couldn't accept that I was alone. But I mean, and lots of people would say to you, you know, how brave you are, but I never consider myself as someone who's brave. It'd be interesting to ask you to that as well. And I think people assume that it's riskier or somehow harder to travel alone as a woman. And obviously, again, we've only ever been women travelling alone, so it's hard for us to compare. But do you think it's riskier to travel alone as a woman? Because I think that's one of the big reasons women don't travel alone, because they feel that they're going to get raped and murdered and they're much more vulnerable and it's much more dangerous.
I don't think it is. I think the hardest part, as I said in my presentation last night, the hardest part is actually starting as a woman. I think it is harder as a woman starting, maybe, because we've had it instilled in us for a very long time, subconsciously, not deliberately, but girls are told more often, be careful, don't fall over, whereas the boys are climbing the trees and that kind of thing. So from a very early age, and not because anybody's meaning any harm to us, but that's just the way we were brought up. And we are expected to, you know, people assume we're more vulnerable and that it's harder for us. And the only reason I think, and as I say, like, I have never done it as a guy, so I don't know if it's harder. But I think that we, you know, it's just instilled us all the time, even as we're travelling. But otherwise, I don't think it is harder. I think in some cases, I think it's different maybe on some levels. But I think in some situations it's harder, and in others it's easier maybe, you know, so probably it levels out. More vulnerable, no, I don't think so. Again, in some cases maybe, but maybe we're not a threat. As a woman, you're not a threat. You know, as a guy, maybe you're seen more as a threat, and so more things might happen to you in that case. So you guys actually might be more vulnerable than us in some cases, you know. Whereas, like I said, men want to look after us generally. They're not after raping and pillaging us. They're after looking after us, and particularly if you're on your own. they feel that need to protect. While you're on my watch, I will look after you. Sometimes when you don't want them to. So, no, I don't think.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That again, when I was travelling through these tribal areas of Arunachal Pradesh, I'd find that people were sort of from valley to valley. They were sort of passing me from one elder to the next because they were like, someone needs to look after you. You're a woman alone, and I don't think that would have been the same with if you were a man. But Jackie, talking about risk, like one of the things that really struck me about your book is how you really did it. You slept wild, kind of everywhere, and you slept on your Enfield. You slept on beaches. You were on your own, and that's quite a perceived vulnerable thing to do. I mean, do you think that's riskier as a woman, or did you ever feel in danger, or what measures? Sorry, that's a lot of questions, isn't it?
No, hang on a minute. You slept on the Enfield? How did that?
She showed me how to do it earlier, but
wow, I need to see that picture.
You can. I put my feet on the handlebar and leant against the backpack. And I don't move about much in my sleep, and you can I even was able to turn over. I did fall off once.
Did you have your full 8 hours?
Yeah,
Really?
well, perhaps not full 8 hours, but a good sleep.
Yeah, but you really, I mean, you slept anywhere and everywhere, really, and
Yes.
I thought that was very brave.
I don't know. I think it was the girl guide in me again, coming out and thinking this would be a nice spot. In Australia, you could go and not see anybody for days, weeks, months if you chose. And so there, I'd just get off the track, find a tree. It hadn't rained for 3 years in some places, so you didn't need a tent. Just park up the bike and light a fire and make some tea, and then bed down for the night, and then get up in the morning and ride off. But I did try to not be seen. If I was in areas where there were people, I would I've wild camped all over Europe as well, and you just think, oh, that's all right, I can go there. So you go past, have a look, and then go back, and then just sneak off down a farm track or something and just sleep under a tree.
But
or on
you've
a
done that
beach.
too, right?
I have done it, but I mean, most of the time when I'm places mainly I travel, I end up staying in sort of tribal villages or brothels, actually, mainly.
Yeah, it's a good place.
A lot of brothels. But when I was wild camping in Cambodia, I remember trying to hide myself, and this is when I was riding a bright pink Honda Cup down the remains of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and in this town I'd been to in Cambodia, I'd bought these like bright orange floral pajamas. So I remember trying to hide myself off this road with my bright pink motorbike and my illuminous pajamas, which could have been seen from the International Space Station, and thinking that my camouflage tactic wasn't that good. But it's really interesting. I was researching female solo travellers this week and just thinking about this panel a bit, and obviously we've all heard of Elspeth Beard being the first British woman to motorcycle around the world, and you always hear that phrase, the first British woman, and I thought, hang on a second, who was the first woman to motorcycle around the world? Went to our friend Google and found this lady, a French lady called Anne-France Dotheville. Who's heard of Anne-France Dotheville? Not many, a few have. Well, you should look her up, because she was actually the first woman to motorcycle around the world. She set off in about 1973 riding a Kawasaki 125. She was a total babe and style icon. She practically rode around the world in her platform boots and flares. And she rode about 20,000 miles on 3 continents, but is very little known. And the reason she's become a little bit better known in the last few years is that the French fashion house Chloe found her story, became inspired by her, and used her as a muse a few years ago. But thinking about this whole idea of whether it's riskier to be a woman travelling alone, and she said this great quote, which just really made me laugh. She was asked if she was ever afraid travelling alone, and she replied, "Yes, but eventually I discovered the solo woman is extraordinarily protected. In Afghanistan, for example, one day I had a puncture. I saw 3 guys get off a truck. There is one who takes me by the shoulders and makes me sit down. The second stands in front of me to make me shade, and the third repairs my tyre." I mean, I know there's been the whole Me Too thing, but I mean, I love that story. I think it's so wonderful. And I'm sure, I mean, have you had examples of where you just felt extraordinarily protected, where people have just hugely gone out of their way because you're a lady?
Oh, it happens all the time. But it just reminded me of a time in Mexico. It's not quite relevant to the story. It kind of is, but I get a puncture in Mexico, and it's really hot. And usually when I get a puncture, I stop for a minute, I take my jacket off, and sit down and maybe make a roll up or something. Just kind of go. Okay, all right, puncture. I'll get organised in a minute. Take 5. As I'm doing that, I'm thinking, oh no. Then I get my tools out and I start trying to get the front wheel off, and it's seized solid. I cannot get this bloody nut undone. And I'm thinking, I could do with some big shoulders right now. I mean, I think that a lot, but there was a reason for it this occasion. And just as I think it, this truck comes, screeches to a halt. This big guy, I mean, he couldn't have had bigger shoulders, jumps out, and he comes over, this big Mexican, and he said something in Spanish, and I'm like, yeah, this, and he comes along, and he was so strong, it was so seized, and he was so strong that he actually snapped the spanner. He broke the spanner, and I just went, and he looked at me like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was like, never mind. But I think everywhere you go that happens. If I actually had a puncture in Namibia as well, and this bus stop. It doesn't always happen. This bus stopped at one point, and because I'm a woman changing a tire, it's amazing. Like, wow. And these tourists came by on a 4x4 trip, and they're Americans, and they jump out and they're like, oh my God, there's a woman changing a tire, and they start filming me. I'm at a point with the tire change where it's really done. When you're trying to hold, you need an extra pair of hands, and you got the spacers and you got the thing, and you're trying to hold the tire up, and it's really hot, and I'm going, look, I'd switch it off if I were you. I'm going to start swearing in a minute. She was like, oh no, please don't, I'm just filming it for the school children. I'm like, oh God. Okay, so anyway, so they jump back in and they disappear, and this local guy then turns up, and he doesn't even say a word. He just parks his truck. So I've got shade. He doesn't know how to change a tire, actually, funny, but he comes along, he parks up, he hands me an orange, and then he kind of almost gives me his hands and says, what would you like me to do with them? And I'm like, oh, tire change, yeah, sorry. So hold that. So, but it does, it absolutely happens all the time, yeah.
And also that really weird thing, which I think all of us have had when we've travelled, particularly alone, and I am not religious at all, but there's no better way of saying it than calling it the God moments, when something happens to you and you really need help. You really need a big pair of shoulders to come at that exact moment. You really need someone to appear out of the jungle and help you pick up your Enfield. And it happens. It's so weird, and the more you travel alone and the more you start noticing those things, I find they happen more. And Jackie, you've got that great bit from your book. Tell us about it, when you're like, all I want is a roast.
Yeah, I must admit, I was testing the universe a bit. I've been on my own for about 3 days in Australia. I hadn't seen anybody for a long time, and I hadn't seen a woman to talk to for many weeks. And I was tootling along, and I was thinking, okay, and apologies to people who are coming to my talk later, because I will be repeating this story. I said, okay, if you're there, I don't know who or what I was talking to, I would like a lovely roast dinner, I would like a conversation with a woman, and I would like somewhere nice and comfy to sleep tonight, because I'd been sleeping on the ground for quite some time. And I thought, there you go then, that's a test for you. And within the hour, I had dismissed one camping spot. There was a tree that would have been perfectly okay, but something made me go on. And I went on, and I saw some porter cabins in the distance, and I thought, well, I've missed that tree opportunity. How silly of me. I'll go behind these porter cabins. As I approached the porter cabins, a woman came out of one of them and said, oh my God, it's another woman. That's amazing. I've got a roast dinner on. And would you like to sleep in one of the road train cabins tonight? And it was one of my dreams, was to get in a road train, let alone sleep in one. So all 3 things were answered within the hour, and that did make me think, I must admit. Was it the Outback gods? And that wasn't the only time I'd had things like that happen either.
I love that story. And Steph, I'm sure you've had some pretty crazy experiences like that. Those kind of, when angels appear out of nowhere, when you just really need someone or something.
Quite a few, but I'm actually still hungover and my brain's not working and I can't think of any right now. Can I just put my shades on and go to sleep? What about you, Anne?
Oh,
That's unfair. God, well, I can definitely think of a time. This was a long time ago, 12 years ago, when my friend and I, well, there were two of us, obviously. We were driving, this is the first long journey I did, was driving a tuk-tuk from Thailand back to England. And we'd been driving across Kazakhstan for what felt like days, and not seeing anyone, and no trees, and it's a really boring country to drive across. And we ran out of petrol, which was really, obviously, schoolgirl error. And then these people just appeared out of nowhere. We're like, oh, we can help you fill that with petrol. And I've had the same when I'm really bad. It's a family trait. We all run out of petrol. We hate stopping for petrol. I ran out of petrol in the middle of the Lao jungle on my Honda Cub, having, again, not seen anyone all day. And thinking, fuck, this is, it's getting dark. I'm in the jungle. And then suddenly these two people appear around the corner and siphon some fuel out of their bike, but one of them does grab my boobs in the process as well as payment. But
Well, that's a given.
harmlessly, sort of.
Harmless grope. Yeah.
Harmless.
Hang on a minute. Let's back up a minute. So you drove a tuk-tuk from Thailand back to the UK?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that.
Have you?
Wow.
Well, the tuk-tuk's in Norfolk. I'm sure she'd like to do a return
back
journey.
again?
Yeah.
Really? Seriously? Because
She's been quite bored for the last 12 years. Yeah.
12
She's sitting in Norfolk.
How long did that
taking
take?
children to school? It took 3.5 months. 98 days. It was the Guinness World Record for the longest ever journey by tuk-tuk, which is obviously a world record I had dreamt about since school.
My brain's ticking over now.
It has to be Germans broke it.
Oh.
Now, we haven't got a huge amount of time, so I'm going to do about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to throw it out to the audience for some questions. Hopefully you've all got some questions. So, to you two ladies, it's like the big questions now, the kind of existential, like, what did you learn about yourself? Jackie, what is the biggest thing you learned about yourself on your epic 7-year round-the-world Enfield adventure?
I learned not to worry. A solution will always come up.
Yeah.
That's a flipping great thing to learn. Yeah. Steph?
Sorry, I'm with you now. Yeah. No, I learned, and again, I said this last night, but I learned that I'm not a fraud. So I had this imposter complex, which I didn't realise was an actual thing until I just thought it was just me. I thought I'm a fraud. And so any minute now, people are going to realise I've got no clue what I'm doing, and And then when I got to the end, and it's a bit like you doing the certificate thing, I got to the end and I went, oh, I'm not a fraud. Whoa, check me out. I actually did it. Why? Because I didn't really think that I was going to do it. I had no idea. So I learned that I wasn't a fraud, and I did learn not to worry so much. I mean, I don't say I don't worry at all about things. I think it's human nature maybe to worry sometimes, but I definitely worry less, and I'm a lot more relaxed than I used to be, So I don't worry about what people think about me so much anymore.
That is also an excellent thing to learn. And do you think you would have learned those things, or do you think the journey would have had such a sort of deep impact on you if you'd been in company?
No, I think it would have been different. I don't know. I've definitely learned more on my own. I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I don't want to take away from anybody who travels, as a group or anything, or as a couple. I don't think it's the ultimate thing to do to travel alone, because there's really big downsides to that as well. I mean, it gets pretty bloody lonely sometimes. But those are moments. My helmet time is pretty cool, and I think if you're with a couple, you've got your helmet time as well. Don't get rid of the bloody intercom. That's what I say.
Oh, definitely.
And just have some helmet time to yourself, and that time to think. But I do think that I have learned more being on my own, and not because I am the sort of person that will allow someone else to help me if they offer. I have no issue with that at all. So if they're not there, I've got to get on with it and crack on. So I've definitely, for me, it's worked out that it's been the best education. Yeah.
Jackie, I mean, you travelled with Hendrikus and with Paul, but with Hendrikus more and on your own. So do you think you learnt more when you're on your own? I mean, when you're with Hendrikus, I think you allowed him to sort of do things.
I was tagging along behind him, which was lovely. I'd had a lifetime of responsibility. I was a mother and a wife and a health visitor, and there were schedules to stick to, times. I was looking at watches, and I was in heaven, just tootling along behind him. and let him make all the decisions until such a time. It couldn't have been better, really. By the time he decided to go off on his own, he taught me how to travel, really. And so I have had the best of both worlds.
It's interesting. I think perhaps sometimes as women we find it easy to fall into that supporting role when we've got a very capable man. And I know my boyfriend Marley is so much better at most things, map reading, mechanics, etc. So I just become really useless when I'm with him. So I have to go and travel on my own and remind myself that I can do these things. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up in a minute. So, quick 2 last questions.
Fire round.
What would be the one thing you wouldn't leave home without?
My motorbike.
Apart from your motorbike,
All right, sorry.
and your pants and
Leatherman. No, I like my Leatherman. It's a great tool. Yeah,
sponsored by Leatherman. Miss Furnox?
For me, it's a sarong. A sarong
that's
is
a good
really
one.
useful.
Yeah.
It can be a curtain if you're in a place where there aren't any curtains to stop people peeping in. It's a pillowcase. It's a towel. It's a garment.
Excellent. Mine would be this, definitely.
Oh, yeah, I got
water
those.
to go bottle. If you haven't got one of these, get one. They're amazing. It's a water filter. I've travelled all over the place with mine and literally drunk out of rivers and scary looking taps, and I'm still here. They are absolutely awesome. But also my lucky teddy bear Wirral, who becomes everywhere with me. Anyway, and final question. One piece of advice, or as many pieces of advice, for other ladies or gentlemen who are either going to travel alone or have travelled alone and need travelling alone improving.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't listen to Steph. I don't know why anyone asked her on this panel. Jackie.
But I'd say the opposite. I'd say go. Don't wait for, I've got to wait for this or that or the other. Just make the time and go.
But sadly, if you haven't got the money, you can't borrow off Wonga anymore, can you? Credit card instead. My advice as well would be just stop making excuses and fanning around. Sorry, excuse the pun. And just go. Right, so has anyone got any questions for us three? Anyone got anything to ask about travelling alone or anything really, just not Brexit? What would you like to ask?
With the different cultures in the different countries, did you get any animosity or objections from people being female?
So the question was that with different cultures and different countries, did we get any animosity from people about being female? Jackie, do you want to start?
Not animosity, surprise. In Pakistan, there was the Silk Route Festival taking place in Gilgit, and there was a ladies' only afternoon where women could go on their own, and I went to that to talk to women, actually, and they couldn't understand why I wanted to travel on my own without my family, and I couldn't understand why they didn't want to, but of course it's shameful and they thought dangerous for them. So it was a misunderstanding of cultures rather than animosity. They couldn't understand why I wasn't happy without Allah in my life, and but so it was a complete mismatch of cultures. But I didn't feel any animosity from anybody that I can remember, except those two skippers that I was on boats with.
Yeah, that's a really scary story in your book. Anyway, we don't want to put people off. Steph,
like I said, don't do it. No, I'm kidding. What was my story? What was the question?
did you have any animosity from any cultures for being a woman?
Confusion, yes. Pity, a lot of pity. So people are like, oh, you poor thing, you've been left on the shelf, haven't you got nothing else to do but ride around on your motorbike? Which is kind of true, I suppose. But no, but I don't ever remember any animosity at all. No, lots of confusion, and I loved explaining to people, that I was actually happy doing this, and this is my choice, and that I'm here because I want to be, and then once they understood, they're like, and like you said, it's a cultural thing, so it's great to be able to explain that to someone. They go, oh, fair play, good on you, high five, So yeah.
I've never had any animosity. No, same thing, confusion, and often, but also that thing of being in motorbike gear, like in Elspeth's videos. Often people just don't realise you're a woman, and then you take your helmet off. And I've had people going, "It's a girl," but, you know, but no animosity, definitely not. Yeah. Jeff.
Sort of opposite question. Did you get much, I suppose, yearning, especially from women in male-dominated societies, that they wish they could do the same thing but never would?
So the question was that did we sort of get the opposite, a sort of yearning from women in male-dominated societies that they kind of wish they could do the same thing but couldn't. Steph?
Yeah, definitely got a lot of that, and Iran springs to mind, and a lot of women who were just in awe of what I was doing. They couldn't believe that I was out there doing it, and they were so impressed. And when you did get a chance to speak to them, they would be, you know, wow, I wish I could do that, you know. But of course, they can't in a lot of situations, and so you kind of feel a little bit guilty. But in those senses, I would just spend more time with them and share what I could, and be a little window to parts of the world that they would never ever get to see. You know, so that's all you can do. You know,
Jackie?
Well, one occasion springs to mind. In Colombia, I stopped at a farm to buy some freshly made yogurt, and it was a family-run farm, and the young daughter came out. She was about 16 or 17, and she looked at the bike and she looked at me, and she was absolutely spellbound, and she kept circling the bike going, "Guapa, guapa," and she said to her parents, "This is what I want to do. I'm going to do this." And I'd love to know if she did.
Actually, I have a photograph of a little girl in Sudan. I put it on Facebook the other day, and I was just like, this is what a seed of inspiration looks like. And it's this little girl, she must be 10 years old, and she's looking at all the countries on the front of my screen, because I've written them all on the front of the screen. And she's just got her hand on the screen, and she's just deeply enthralled in the countries and reading them. And I just happened to snap the picture, and it's just like, oh, I love that. I'd love to know if that did actually plant something, you know.
Yeah, wouldn't it be wonderful to somehow go back and see, you know, did they go and do it? Any other questions? Oh, Adam, yes. Not a filthy one. This is children's friendly event.
Oh yeah, Matt's in the back.
There aren't any children, but anyway, adult.
With short trips, it's easy to justify sort of going on holiday for a couple of weeks, but with a really long trip for months and years, do you feel it's necessary, or did you have any agenda, like, you know, to go and look at architecture, or, you know, did you have any kind of thing other than just travelling?
A mission as such. Yeah.
So Adam was asking really that if you're going on a really long trip, did you have any other agenda apart from just travelling, like looking at architecture? Personally, my mission's always been to write books. So it's to sort of tell stories, I guess, write books.
No, not at all. I just went because I thought it would be fun, and it was most of the time. I had no idea I was going to write a book. I wrote diaries because I thought maybe one day when I'm really old and grey, somebody would read them to me and I would relive it. And it wasn't until I came back and people said, "You did what?" that I thought, well, and that was it really. I didn't think I was doing anything particularly interesting.
I was trying to find a boyfriend. No, seriously. Sorry, seriously.
Anyone?
Any takers? So this wasn't the mission. I mean, I did have a mission, which was, again, like I said, to kind of maybe to prove something to myself. I always wanted to travel, so I wanted to learn more, I wanted to educate myself, I wanted to speed up the learning process of that sort of, you know, knowledge, I guess, which definitely has happened. But I became a grandmother when I was on the trip, which, yeah, you can't believe that, right? I wear Converse, man. You know, what kind of grandmother wears Converse? You look at her face. Read the book. There is no book, don't worry. but my I forgot what I was talking about now. So I became a grandmother to a gorgeous little girl, and one thing that I sort of became about for me was to give her something. She doesn't have to go ride a motorbike around the world or even ride motorbikes, but I wanted to know that she doesn't have to be the cutesy little girl with the pink ribbons, and she can be that if she wants to be, but I want her to know that she has a choice. And her mother is a very cool lady, but she's also that pink cutesy beautician kind of a girl. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not, as I said, but I think that it's cool to give her a balance. And I look up to my grandmother because she was a very strong woman, and I love the fact that maybe one day she could read my book and learn something, and maybe be proud of her grandmother. So, yeah.
I can't believe your grandmother. Still in shock. Right, I think we've got time for one more question, this lady, and then obviously we'll be milling around afterwards, so if anyone wants to come and ask us more questions, we're here. But this lady here.
Do you have any tips for staying as healthy as possible whilst you're on the road?
Tips for staying as healthy as possible. I'm going to just give that to you two while I ever think about that. Jackie? Oh, water to go.
Well, I eat anything. I ate local food, and I drank local water. I didn't buy bottled water. I rather object to bottled water. Yoga. I did yoga a lot. I love yoga.
That's what I was going to say. I don't do yoga, but I do stretch, and I learned that the hard way because that's how I learn everything. So I had to get injured first and start suffering before I learned that stretching is really important, and reducing the vibrations on your motorbike. I can't stress that enough. I mean, the Beach Boys lie. There's no such thing as good vibrations. It's like it really does affect you, even if you can't feel it. You don't have to be riding a Harley to understand that. After a little while in the saddle, it starts affecting your spine and your joints, and it wears them down. And anything you can do to reduce those vibrations, I would highly recommend it. And a seat that supports the whole of you, all of your bum, not just part of it. Get a wide seat. So
that's an excellent tip. I also took a yoga mat with me and did yoga. Yeah, it helps when you're sitting on a bike all day and you just like this. It's good. I think that's all we've got time for. If anyone would like to ask us anything afterwards, then please do. Thank you so much for coming.
Mine's a GNT.
And me too. Steph and Jackie, thank you so much for joining me. Jackie's talking. What time are you on, Jackie?
3:30.
3:30. I'm on at 6.
And I'll be at the
Steph,
bar.
you're too late for. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, my mind is completely blank out with